Hello and welcome to tutorial 3 for Visionaire Studio. This time it's going to be all about setting up your character for your game, and that's going to include some tips about creating animations for them, how to get those animations out as PNG sequences from your particular animation package. I'm using Flash here, but it's similar for all of them. How to import all those frames into Visionaire Studio, and then how to set up the properties for each of those character animations. I had a late night last night putting together a character with some animation for his walks, his talks, and some kind of default standing where he's standing animations where he's breathing in and out. So we're going to go straight to Adobe Flash and show you how to export those, and then we'll get on to the Visionaire side of things. So I'll crack on. Again, I'll speed some of this stuff up because it is Flash specific. No need to watch me export every single bit, but I'll go through this first one to see. So here I've got all named the actual boy here, standing front, and you can see the animation here. It's actually just like a breathing animation, a really slow breath loop, just so that when the character's still on the screen, he actually has a little bit of life to him. One other thing you'll notice about my character design, in this case, because it's something that's got to be turned around really quickly before the end of December if it wants to be part of the competition, that I've gone for a simple character design that's not only easy to animate but actually lends itself nicely to not having to do a huge amount of facial animation. Now, it's part of the storyline that I want this character's face to be covered for the majority of the actual gameplay, but it is also an excellent advantage it being that way. If I swap this out, for example, for the stand talking, so let's look talk front, you'll see on this bit of animation all I've got for the talk, his little visor pops up and back down again. So we're actually going to use Visionaire to step about on this timeline so he can be looking as if he's talking. That means you don't have to do any mouth movements or anything like that, which is going to certainly speed up the process for this whole game. So I'll show you how I export one of these. We'll start off first with the actual front stand positions. So let's just swap that to something else. So we'll start with the stands. So we can do stand front. What I tend to do with my characters, I set up a standing position that isn't actually facing the direct front. I will have a walking position that is directly in front. I'll show you those two, the difference between those two now. So I'll just show you them side by side. So my actual walk front, you'll notice is kind of the right place. So walk front, you'll see he is actually facing the front, but his default stand position, I've got him at kind of a slightly sideways on angle. I just think the actual design of the character looks better from that angle than it does from the front. And you'll see how that works when we pull that into Visionaire. So again, one of the important things when you're exporting graphics from anywhere, really, I tend to try and keep a document size here that is going to be used for all of this character's sprites, all of his animations and things, that he'll be able to fit into this if he's bending over, jumping in the air, kind of got his arms out and things like that. So that can keep all of these things roughly the same size, line them all up, and makes it life a little bit easier later on. So when you've got a bit of animation like this is the standing animation. It's actually 22 frames. They're only very slightly different, but I do want this one to be quite subtle, all of his standing animations. So with Flash it's going to be different to every other program, but there's 22 frames here in this animation. The way I usually do these now is with a graphic clip, and I just set this to be 22 frames long as well. It is there. So this actually now goes over the whole 22 frames that are inside this clip, and I'm going to just export that with File, Export Image, and I had you can see here I've been caught out. I did a really basic character and I was going to take you through doing that, but to be honest it took almost as long to do the real character once you've got the actual design down. So I'm just going to delete one of them now. 1 second. So characters. Just to remind you again of the file structure, I've got my Fantasy Quest folder, which is the name of the game. We're going to export some assets for the game here. It's a character and it's the boy that we're doing. And in this case, it's going to be all the stands. So I'll create a stands folder, and in there this is going to be the front. So I can create a front folder. I might as well, while I'm here, create the others as well. So there's going to be a back, there's going to be a left, and with this character there's actually a different right. Depends on your character design entirely, but if you can design a character that works when it's flipped, then you'll actually have to do you'll only have to do front, back and a left, and you can flip all the left stuff to the right. Unfortunately, in part of the design of this character, I've put him with this orange sash. This is meant to be reminiscent of the Visionaire logo, and you'll see some other things to do with the game that are kind of bringing in ideas about Visionaires. This is meant to be for the competition for the demo game. So he can't be flipped because his sash goes in one direction, and when you flip him over it'll be going in the wrong direction, so I had to sort that out as well. That means a little bit more work. So this is the front stand, so we're in assets, characters, boys, stands, front, and I'm just going to call that, I'm actually going to call it knight, because he is a knight, and it'll become apparent why later. So knight, front, stand. I like to put the full file name, so when I've got all of these images everywhere I can see what's what. Otherwise, if you just put front and hope that it stays in this folder, if it ever gets muddled up, then you will never find it again. So I'm going to export that. The best way of exporting, again for me, this is only the method I use. I export the full document size so that it actually captures all of this and makes all of this white area transparent, and then all the characters can be sat in exactly the same place. So I can export that, and that was very quick. In fact, quicker than I expected it to be. So let me just check that. Let's go into Fantasy Quest, Assets, Characters, Boy, Stands, Front, and it's only exported one. I know why. Delete that and we'll start again. Yes, if you're using Flash like me, I've done for nearly 20 years and still can't remember how to do that. Go File, Export, and rather than exporting an image, which we were doing yesterday, we're exporting a movie this time, which is going to be a sequence of PNGs in this case. So you can see here it says PNG sequence now. We're in characters, boy, stands, front. So it's going to be knight, front, stand. And usually put underscore because I have a lot of numbers after there. Full document size, export, that's more like it. So the progress bar there, so when we actually go and have a look in the folder now, you'll see there's all the individual frames for our knight from the front. I'll show you that. So there it is in Windows Photo Viewer, and I can step through, you can see his individual frames for all of them. So we're going to import them into Visionaire shortly. I'm just going to go through and do another couple of exports so you can see the process going through a few times. So this time I'm going to swap out our front stand, and I'm going to put the back stand in this time. You can see he's facing the back now, and because all these characters are all lined up, it's just a matter of swapping them out each time. It's much simpler this way. If I do undo, you'll see that, and redo, undo and redo, they're lined up perfectly. So just be careful when you do your artwork. It will make your life a lot easier if you get things lined up from the start. And again, this has got this one's actually got a little bit longer. It's got 25 frames inside, so I'm just going to extend inside his head. Just going to extend that out to 25 frames so all of them get captured. And same again, file, export, movie. In the stands folder, it's the back one, and it's the knight, it's a stand, and it's from the back. Did I name them the other way around before? Knight, front, stand. Okay, so it's going to be knight, back, stand. Stickler for getting it right. There we go. And we're exporting the full size. There we go, all those frames are done. Sometimes worth just going to check. Stands, back. There you go, there's all the back stands done. So next one, we're going to do our stand left. And we can just double check how many frames that is. That's 22 as well. So let's come back to 22. Have I done 21 there? Yes, I have. Right, again, you can see the actual animation there. It's just like a little breath. Just gives a bit of life to the character when it stood still. So same again, file, export movie, make sure we're in left, oops, left, so it's night, left, stand, and export all of those, and then finally swap, and we'll do, just double check again, it is 22, file, export, movie, and this time it's night, right, stand, underscore, save, export. There we go, simple as that. There has been quite a lot of work put into this little character. You can see it's quite a simple shaped character. It's got some shading effects and things on it just to bring it to life a little bit, and it's got like a little shadow underneath him just to give him some kind of grounding in the scenes and things. But again, my main purpose here has been to get a nice little recognisable character, something that isn't too complicated to animate. If I'm going to do some other animations, like him bending over or picking an item up, or if he's going to trip over, or there's going to be some little action section, then I don't want to be animating something that takes me hours to draw every single frame of it. The way that Flash works, you can actually grab hold of these, if you don't already know this, you can grab hold of these individual bits and they can be rotated and positioned, so it kind of works a bit like a puppet once you get going. And you can set keyframes up so it animates between those things. It's actually quite a quick method of doing some animation for them. So, less about Flash then, let's move on to Visionaire now I've exported all of those things. So, here we are back in Visionaire, and we're going to go ahead and create the character. We'd already put a placeholder character in, but I'll just quickly go through that again. Let me just delete that character and start again. I'm going to call it Knight as well this time, so we know what's what. So we've got a Knight, we have the unnamed outfit. I usually change that to normal. This character is going to end up gaining something. I think I might have mentioned that earlier. So midway through the game they will actually pick something up, and that will affect the way that the character looks for the rest of the game. So that's going to involve him actually effectively changing outfit halfway through. So there will be another one that we'll make here. And I gave a brief overview of these in the first tutorial. If you haven't had a look at that, then do go back and have a look about what each of these do. So now we're actually going to load in. Here you can see the different directions: front, back, left, right for walking, front, back, left, right for standing. So we just exported all the stands. We'll do that first. So we'll start with front, and we use this tool here, the load frame sequence. So with front selected, we go load frame sequence, and we go to our fantasy quest, assets, characters, boy, stands, and front. It's a good point actually to mention now. You notice I've stopped calling this character boy and I've called it Knight instead. If at any point you want to change the name of this folder, now would be the time to do it before you've referenced any assets in here. So I might actually do that just for the sake of keeping everything named the same. If you change a folder halfway through a project, everything that's linked to the items in this folder you will lose the links to, and Visionaire will lose all references to those items. So if, like me, you're a bit chop and change with the name of things, decide on something early before you start importing graphics like this. So far we've only imported assets from the rooms folder and nothing's changed there, it's just this Knight folder there. So we're going to do stands, start with front, click the first frame. You can see all the frames here for this front stand. Visionaire is clever enough that when you click one of them, you don't need to select them all, because it's a numbered sequence that came out of Flash. It automatically recognises the frame sequence from 0001 to 0022. And the transparency, this is what I talked about earlier on, when you're exporting from Flash. I'll just nip back there, this whole area in the background that I can make green or any other colour, that is transparent. So when it talks about alpha channels, if you don't already know what they are, it's basically the area with no pixels, transparent pixels in that area, so it picks that up as well. So what you end up with is a character sat here like this that you can see all the way around him. I'm using my middle mouse button to move about the view there. That's not actually changing the position of him. And again, the control button can zoom in, so you can see he's now not a vector shape anymore, he's a bitmap, so you can see the pixels and things like that. Again, the zoom's up in the top corner there, so getting back to 100%. So we've imported the front animations. You can see here the frames just like you have in Flash, and there's some controls to kind of step backwards through those frames and step forwards and jump to the start and jump to the end, which are useful. And there's a big play button in the middle, and if you play that, it'll play that through, and you can see that's the little breathing loop. It might be a little bit quick, that actually, so the thing you can do at this stage, I mean, I could have done this in Flash, but I prefer to get them into Visionaire and then fiddle around with them here. On the settings for this, or the properties for this front standing animation, you can choose the pause time, so it defines how long each picture is shown for. It's kind of like a frames per second, I suppose, but the Visionaire developers talk about this slightly differently as how long it pauses between each frame. So if I make that double the amount of pause, when I press play, it's slower, the animation, you see, twice as slow. And that's actually, it looks alright like that, maybe a little bit. Let's go a little bit slower. Let's try 80 instead. See, that's really slow now. And that maybe, that kind of looks good for somebody breathing, gives him a little bit of life. So we're going to go with 80 on all of these. So I can set that up with all of them dead quickly. Unfortunately you can't shift select them, but if we go back and we set the back one to 80 ready, and the left one to 80, and the right one to 80, then they're all going to be the same speed when they come in. So let's import those back frames now. We've done the front ones, let's do back. So we click on there, we'll make sure we go to stands, back, click the back one, click open. Recognises the sequence again and the alpha channel, and there they all are. Let's just press play and check that. So there you go, there's a little breathing loop for the back. And let's do the left one now. So stands left, there he is. Open, okay. Just check that one. Yep, it's nice and breathy. And right, final one. Stands right. Okay, so we've got all four of our stand positions in, our left, our right, our back and our front. Incidentally, if you had designed a character where the left and right are just a flip of each other, it looks like this character is, but it isn't quite like that, and this is because I'm a stickler as well. In his default position, his kind of front standing position, you see the sash goes down, so it's low on his left hip. So when he's facing left here, you can see this left hip, it's low and it goes up underneath his arm like a sash would, whereas on the right hand side it's kind of like over his arm as well there. So it's only a small detail, but it's up to you how you design your characters. Just give you a tip there, if you do make one that's flippable, you'll save yourself one set of animation. Okay. So I think the most important thing to talk about now is aligning each of these graphics together. You can see, if I actually move with my middle mouse, you can see this dotted line here. That's the registration point, or the center point of this particular graphic, which is in the top left corner by default. Now that's not where you're going to want to put it. Where you want to put this is right in the dead center of your character, at the point where you kind of want his feet to hit the floor, because that registration point is used by the Visionaire engine to work out where the characters stood, both in kind of forward and backward perspective, but also in front of and behind other items. If I just nip back to the rooms, you'll remember from the first tutorial, and if you didn't see the first tutorial, these are very rough drawings. So the frog door room, this pillar here is actually an asset that's loaded in separately. Just to remind people of that, I'll just move it out of the way. So it's something that a character is going to be able to walk behind, and that's what that registration point does. You set the registration point for this pillar and for your character, and when your character is higher than this pillar, it goes behind it. When it's lower, it comes in front of it. So it's a clever trick that the very clever programmers of Visionaire have used here to make it possible to layer things to move behind and in front of things, even though we're not dealing with a 3D scene. So back to the character again. Registration point then is what we're going to sort out. So let's just get the standing animations open, front. The way to set the registration point or the animation center as they call it in Visionaire. You click this little window icon here, and when you move down here you can click and drag that little crosshair about. I hope that's coming out okay on the video, but I'm actually going to position it just between his 2 feet there. It's not quite as low as his bottom foot, but it's kind of more the center point of the character, I think, and it should be easy for me to find that point. If I look at his head, because he is stood at a slight angle here, it's not straightforward. I'm just going to pop it down about there. You can actually, looking up at the top right corner here, it's just changed because my cursor's moving, but as you move your cursor about you can see these coordinates. That's the current cursor position. So when you've got this tool on and you're clicking and dragging, you can actually get very precise about where that goes. I mean, I often find a nice round number there, like 160 by 300, and at least if that point's the same and the graphics have all been loaded in from the same like size image, then I can get that pretty well positioned, knowing that all of my artwork was lined up in Flash, if you remember. So when I swapped these things out, they're all lined up already. So all helps having things lined up. So I've set the registration point for the front one. If I go at the back one, you'll see the crosshair snaps back up there again. So what I want to do is get that in exactly the same place. They have introduced a tool that works really well for doing this. You could drag this and manually position it right in the center of the character again. I've forgotten what the actual thing was I put on the front one now. So what was it, 160 by something, 160 by 300. Now the back one's actually much easier to line up because he's got a dead center and he's stood totally flat. And looking at that, oh, I've grabbed the artwork by mistake. Looking at that, that's the center point of that is 152 in fact by 300, which is dead center on that character. So I might use that instead, 152 by 300. So you can do this manually, like I'm doing it here, but this tool next to it, the eye, the Animation Studio, helps you to, in their words, harmonise with other character animations. So the front and the back ones, I've kind of put the centre point of the character roughly where I want it there. I'll switch between those two. So I'll use the Harmonise Studio, the Animation Studio here, to show you how this works. It shows you the current one that you've got selected, and you can select from the Adjust To list one that you want to line it up with. And this is actually a really good point here. You notice you've got right, back, left, front, right, back, left. Now this is because the naming convention that I've used isn't enough to distinguish between the walking animations and the standing ones. So let's correct that first. This is something I think I've mentioned on the forums before, and hopefully they're going to update this so you don't have to do this each time, but I'll just cancel that for now. What's happening is this list, front, back, left, right, is coming through, and so is this list, front, back, left, right, and you can't tell the difference between them. So I'm going to quickly just call this walk underscore front and walk underscore back. I mean, these kind of naming conventions, whilst it's kind of good to do them, they take a little bit more time, but they will pay off in the end. Things like that particular list is very confusing. Let's go stand and these as well. I mean, you could have just put an S or anything like that, but in 2 months' time, when you're working on your game and you wonder why it says S in front of your front thing, and you'll know why. So let's go back then. So standing animations, the front, we're going to harmonise that front one with the back one. So with the front one selected, we click on harmonise. It shows us our front one. You can press play, so you can see the animation, and you want to adjust it to, and here we go, the list's updated now, so we can tell which is which. We want to adjust it to stand back. And you see that jumps out the way there, and that's because these are lining up the animation centers now. If I actually click and activate that animation center and move it, I can reposition these by eye so that the characters match up a lot better. So I can just pop his toes so they just match up with his toes and his shoulders, and that's all good. And click OK. So we can see what's happened now. The stand front and the stand back, they've got their crosshairs in exactly the same place. Now, the one that was actually right was the front one, so I've kind of done that the wrong way around. So let's just set that back one to the floor, because that's the one we want to be right. Go to the front one and harmonise that, and we're going to harmonise that with the back. Stand back, grab that and pull the back one into position like that, so that they're the same. Okay, so there's our front and there's our back. And we're going to do the same with the left and the right ones as well. So we'll go left, I'm going to harmonise that one with the back. See, he's right up off the screen there. So bring that into position. And you can see his helmet. When he turns around, I don't want it to be off here at the side or up. I want to get him in a good position. You can always tweak these afterwards. That's one of the nice things about Visionaire. These are really easy to tweak afterwards. And stand right, we're going to harmonise that one to the back as well. So let's stand back and click on the thing, bring down, and just get that nicely positioned as well. You often find once you see the character moving about, you need to come back here and tweak that slightly. So that's all the stand animations set up. That's them all kind of aligned together, so they should look right as he stands still and moves around. What I'm going to do next is go and export all of the walk animations as well, and it's exactly the same process, but I won't take you through all that, so I'll be back shortly when all the walk ones are done. Okay, so I've imported the walks now, so you can see the front walk there. We've got the back walk, left and the right. Dead simple animation. I mean, you can spend absolutely days animating a walk cycle, and in the other game I'm making Something Foul Afoot. The main character in that has a variety of different walk cycles and a lot of kind of action animations that have taken months of animation to do. In this case, because we've got a short amount of time, if I want to get this into the competition, I've gone for a character that is quite easy to animate. Okay, so one thing I thought I would better go through, I haven't actually aligned all these yet, but you kind of saw that earlier on where you can kind of align each of these to one another. What I can actually do now is take the walk back one and go to the animation studio and harmonise the walk back one with the stand back one, which is stand back one, which is really helpful as well. So it means that when he stops walking, I can actually get him in exactly the right position, so that there's no jar when he stops. Get his head in the right position. You can see his arm. The cursor keys are actually really useful here as well, just for flicking backwards and forwards. Slightly misaligned, but that should look like a bit of animation when he stops walking. So we're just going to get that roughly in the right position, and go OK, and we'll quickly do the others as well. So we'll set walk front and adjust that to the stand front. Bring that in. Let's have a look. I think my stand front isn't straightforward, remember, so just want to get it so that that doesn't jar too much. Get his shoulders close, get the feet close, so you don't really see that happen. Walk left and walk right. Again, let's take walk left and adjust that to stand left, and bring that into position so that they line up nicely. The back of his little skirt there. In fact, they're kind of the same frame, I think, in the animation, so this should be alright. You can always tweak these afterwards. And walk right. Let's align that one to stand right. Again, it's really helpful that I've named these stand underscore, otherwise you wouldn't know which was which. So let's get that one roughly in position, just using the cursor keys there to nudge that and get that exactly right. So should be happy with all that. The reason why I thought I'd come back and show you this next section is the talk animations. You'll notice it doesn't have a front, a back, a left and a right. That's because the guys who made Visionaire have kind of left it up to you to decide how many talk animations you want. In some games, your character might always turn to kind of face the player, if you like, face forward when they're talking. So there'd be no need to have a talk animation for every direction. Again, the other game that I've been making for the last couple of years, that character has got 8 walk directions, he's got the diagonal ones as well, and I have talk ones for all those angles, so regardless of which direction he's facing, if he's picking up an object behind him or 3/4 behind him and starts talking, then there's animation there for that direction. So to set those up, it's just very much the same as these other ones. They've got these settings of which direction they're facing for front, back, left and right. You do this exactly the same for the talk ones, but we're going to have to create them ourselves. So we select talk and we go plus. We want to create a new entry under talk, and it'll just call them animation 1. If you press them all, we want 4 of them. So the first one, let's just name that talk underscore front, and then the next one talk underscore back, and just whiz through and do the others. Talk underscore left and talk underscore right. Okay, and then we just want to make sure that with the settings properties tab clicked there, we go to the front one and we make sure that's when the character's facing the front, the back ones when they're facing the back, the left ones when they're going that way, and the right ones that way. So that'll just tell the Visionaire engine which one of these to play when the character's facing these directions, and that can be as many directions as you like, or just one, as I said earlier on. And I think all my other ones I've set to 80 or 60, the walks I've done. I'll have a fiddle with this to see what looks best. So let's import the footage for them. So again, we go up to the little film thing, so we're going to edit this animation for talk front. I've already exported these, so they should be in my assets folder. Characters, it's the night, it's a talk, and it's front. So open them. And let's just quickly do the other ones as well. Let's go through them all. Assets, characters, night, talk, back. And okay, and then the left one. Assets, characters, night, talk, left. And same again. Assets, characters, nights, talk, right. Right, there we go. Took no time at all. So we can have a look here now. That's the talk animation. It's obviously a little bit quick. And the back one, blah, 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 and left and right. You get the idea. Is just a small bit of animation. I'm actually going to use some of Visionaire's nice little tools here to kind of randomise this up a little bit. I'm kind of a big fan of the LucasArts games, and if you think back to Guybrush Threepwood, if you think of certainly Monkey Island 1, the kind of talk animations, although his mouth was moving, they're kind of quite jumpy, and I kind of like that style, even though the art style is very different here. That I'm doing very clean, colourful graphics, not pixelated. I do kind of like that motion in those LucasArts games. So what I'm going to do is, using the tools in Visionaire here, I'm going to go to the properties for this. I'm actually going to slow this right down for one, so maybe to 80 per second. Let's have a look at that. So it's much slower, but it's just a little bit too rhythmic. It looks like he's kind of like dancing rather than talking. Certainly doesn't look like he's talking different words and sentences. I think it's still maybe a little bit quick still as well. I'm going to put that to 100. Just have a look at that. So it's a little bit slower now. And then I'm going to check this play in random order. So instead of playing through the, you can see here the little playhead going from left to right and starting again, just looping and looping. I'm going to play it in random order. And when you go and look at it now, it looks like he's kind of talking. He's picking out frames. Sometimes it's a sudden jump, sometimes it's just a little jump. So it just gives you a nice little random feel to him talking. And this particular demo, I don't think I'm going to get a chance to voice act this one, but it really helps that the character is moving, and people get used to that. They're reading the text most of the time on the screen anyway, but it's really nice if the character is moving a little bit. If at any later stage you decide he's maybe moving a little bit too much, I think he's maybe looking like he's jumping a little bit too much, you can kind of slow things down by making that number bigger. So it's just a little bit less hectic. Or you could just pop back to Flash, alter some of those frames, re-export so he wasn't maybe moving as high up, but I think that's quite nice. I think it's quite looks quite good for the character. So the settings that we set for that were 140 and random, so let's just set the same for all of those. 140, play and random for the talk back, talk left, play and random, 140, talk right, play random 140. So the last thing to do on those is again to align those object centers, remember, this object center tool, or using the harmonizer. So I'm actually going to take this talk front and I'm going to harmonize that and adjust it to stand front, because that's exactly the same frame I think from my animation, pretty much. So you can get his feet, his toes, hands and everything lined up exactly, and then you won't see a jump when the Visionaire engine changes from the standing position to the talking position. And if you do, you can always pop back here and just tweak it slightly. So talk back wants to be aligned to stand back, just to make sure again that there's no jump in the animation when it moves. Use the cursor keys just to, yeah, see he's slightly out there because I think the first animation of talking, his head moves slightly to the left, so it's not going to be noticeable when it swaps between them. Talk left, let's align that to stand left. And I might get the same thing here where the first frame is slightly different, but it shouldn't be noticeable. That's fine. And talk right, we want to harmonise with stand right. There we go. Click that, bring him into position, use the cursor keys just to sell out. And thank you for the that bug fix, by the way, the Visionaire developers. The cursor keys stopped working in one of the versions a couple of months back, and they're so helpful for being able to line that up. So cheers for that, guys. Okay, so we've got everything lined up now. We've got all of our walks. We've got walk front, back, left, right. We've got standing front, back, left, and right. And we've got a talking animation for front, back, left, and right. Let's just have a look at those. Let's just play one of them back. There you go. It kind of looks like he's talking. So we've got everything set up that we need for the character, really, to get them moving about, to get them standing still, to get them talking and things like that. The random and the character animations, random, they can be timed ones where he might start scratching his head if you don't do anything, or tapping his foot or something like that. Character animations for everything else, really. Things like bending down and picking things up, stretching to pick something up. We'll be doing some of them later in this game as well. It's one of the bits I really enjoy about making adventure games. I've been an animator for years and a graphic designer for years as well, and kind of putting together those skills, Visionaire's really great for being able to pull all of those bits and pieces together. So I quite like doing the odd bit of character animation to kind of increase the appeal of the character, make the game feel a bit fuller. The character can move about a bit more. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is kind of get the character into the game so we can see it. But in order to do that, we're going to have to set up an interface and some cursors for the game. So that's going to be the next lesson. That'll be setting up the interface and cursors so we can actually test this character out. Okay, until next time, goodbye. Hope you've enjoyed listening, and see you soon.